Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Xtreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. Tonight, I'm joined by the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from the Central Florida region, and we are going to be reviewing our continuing showing of a first episode watch of everything here, of Forever Knight, the Canadian vampire who wants to just be human, and we're on episode 11. The title's called The Hunter. And Pixel, as the young 20-something, I imagine people your age are aghast at the fact that the meat that just magically appears in grocery stores, they want to talk about supply chains. They don't want to talk about inflation. They don't realize there's a hunter at the end of it. However, in the world of Nick Knight, a Canadian vampire who's trying to be normal, well, actually, the show's Canadian. He is not technically. He's European. We get a bit of a backstory here with LaCroix and Jeanette because they're being hunted. I found a smiling tree, and I almost thought they were going to try to relate to this to racism. But since they're not in Chinatown in this episode, it's a Schanke heavy episode. Or did my ears doth deceive me? Did I hear them call him Schanke or something? A very garbled episode in terms of quality. It was very difficult for me to hear, even though I've got the DVD that I recently purchased for $1.37 or whatever it was on Amazon, along to go with my coffee shipment, which made it free for shipping purposes because I spent over $35. Obviously, this episode's not very memorable for me, but there's something about Schanke in it that I do like, and I know we're going to have to talk about him a bit because it's a Schanke-heavy episode. What's your take on this?
Yeah, this episode is a bit of a mess.
But why is it a mess?
Well,
we don't have names for the people that are Forever Knight fans. I don't know what they would be called, right? So we got to let them know that.
Wouldn't they be Forever Knights?
I don't know. Knights in White Satin. I mean, you won't get that reference because you're a kid, but I mean, come on.
Eternal Squires.
That's not bad, but it's a bit arrogant.
Well, you're gonna have to take some arrogance away for this episode. This episode has a lot of fine things. It starts out with Schanke and Nick Knight going to an old partner of Schanke's. And they're trying to convince him, oh, we want you back on Homicide. Come on back. Tree Hill, Stone Tree, whatever the name of the chief is. Wants you back. Come on.
It's Stone Tree. And you know how I know that? Because every time I see him, I think of Kolchak, right? Because I always said he's a knockoff of the police chief in there. But actually, the way I really remember is for any music fans, if you've heard the name Jimi Hendrix, he had a song called Stone Free, and it was Stone Free, but dun 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 Stone Free. Great song. So whenever I see him, Jimi Hendrix goes and plays, and I hear Stone Tree, and then I listen to Schanke talk. I'm sorry, please continue.
No, that's fine. And basically his partner gets shot. Just randomly, just drive-by shooting. But it was somebody targeting him. We like there was no doubt.
It was a shot or was it an assassination, sir?
It was an assassination, okay?
Because remember, they're walking at night. They're on the crowded, mean streets of Toronto, and it's like one shot, one kill. Right out of course, Sniper hadn't been released yet. The great movie with Billy Zane, which we'll talk about.
But it wasn't a sniper. Wasn't he on a motorcycle? He drives by.
I don't know. You tell me.
I honestly can't remember, and I watched it like within the past hour. No, it doesn't give us enough time to really care. Schanke cares more than I do, and Schanke wants blood. He wants this man. He wants to go ahead and put him down. But it turns out it looks like. Well, it's Target. What could it be? Oh, it's a target on Schanke too. So better safe than sorry. So they put him in a safe house.
But how do they deliver the message of Schanke being the target? I actually love this. I think the setup's pretty cool though. It's kind of fun watching it online. It's when they get to the cop house and they're talking about it. And there's actually I really liked Stone Tree and Schanke in this episode. I know I'm bagging on a little bit. Stone Tree is basically like, he was a really good cop. I remember blah, 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 because he tells some story, right? Yeah. And he looks at both of them, and Schanke's like, what do you want me to do? Stay at home? No. Oh, no. I need to be on this case. And he goes, I'm going to put you both on it, but you got to make sure that you Dot all your I's and cross all your T's. And Schanke looks at him and he says, the T's will be crossed. I'm like, fuck yeah, Schanke, let's do it. And they know that he's going to put the hit out because they do the old classic thing that never gets old, whether it's from the 30s, 40s, or even current day times. They send you the in-house intramailer flyer of a picture that's obviously been generated in a back room somewhere with red dim lights and fluid that doesn't get used anymore. And it's a picture of Schanke with a circle on it. And that's what disturbs his partner, Nick Knight, to no end. Schanke, look at this. You're the target now. Oh, that's great stuff.
Also, there's a bit of drama because they end up going through police files and they go through Nick's file and it's empty. There's nothing there. And what? Doesn't he hire he hires someone to go ahead and falsify, just put it in there. Oh, it's always been there.
Well, people forget that computers were, while they were common, they weren't an afterthought. So taking decades of data and transposing it into the form that you're using is going to be an issue. And so I thought that was one thing that they tried making yucks at earlier on, where they're trying to introduce technology, computers specifically, and cell phones into television and modern day things. Some shows kind of ignore it. Some tried to implement it. So I didn't necessarily have a problem with that. But I think the real thing here is Schanke. Schanke's out for blood. He's not fucking around.
No.
He's not. I like this. Schanke's kind of tough here.
But they go ahead and they stuff him in a safe house, and whoever is hunting him goes ahead and places a bomb in the window.
It's the C4 package, ladies and gentlemen. This is tremendous. You see it all building up. You see him peeking through. So here's the thing, though. How does the person, the assassin, how does he know where to send the picture to? How does he know where Schanke's at? Because it was only kept on the down low between where they were going to do it, right? Because Nick wants to do that. So it's not that they're using Schanke as bait like they did in Dead Air with the woman hostess, knowingly so. They're doing this because, hey, this guy that, is going to keep hold of Schanke is somebody they can trust. So much so, and this is what I really liked about this episode. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make a food run. I'm going to get you some go-go guy jampan or whatever the hell that Chinese dish is. Because we all know Schanke loves Chinese food. So they get there, they're eating, and Schanke's there. And I thought, okay, if he's an assassin, why doesn't he just shoot him or firebomb, smoke him out? He does something even better. Do you remember how he tries to take him out?
He puts a C4 in the window right by the television.
This is great television.
And Schanke goes ahead and he's like, oh, okay, let me go ahead and oh, how about we put on this? No? Okay. And the young cop goes over there. He turns it on and Schanke's okay, but the young cop is dead. That means Schanke's even more down. Nick is kind of at a loss. He's like, okay, what do I do? I know what I'll do. He takes Schanke back to the Raven and decides, this is your safe house now. And he has Jeanette watch over him, basically.
Yeah, and I've told you, the show's always at its best when we have Schanke getting his balls busted, but Schanke's not bad. Part of me wants to see as a subplot, and I'm being serious when I say this because of how strong Schanke was in this episode. I want to see him basically kind of find out that Nick's a vampire and be mad about it. No, you're not. I want him to take the moral high ground over him and go at him. That'd be a great subplot. They're great friends for a season or so. Schanke finds out some shady things about him, and it's just completely unacceptable. Maybe they could work out his wife dying unintentionally or something like that kind of triggers him. I don't know what, but I'm like, this would be really good because, look, Nick Knight's been around, obviously, hundreds of years, right? So he knows human beings. Sometimes it seems like he's not that great on current human beings. He can't figure things out, and that's why we have the interesting drama of whatever moral lessons going to be learned in tonight's episode or look back, which we'll get into here in a moment. But I think that with Schanke, it's one of those things where you can hope for it, but it's probably not going to happen because the show is about Nick. But it's just, again, he was a guy that early on we're like, oh my God, please don't be the dumb, stupid ass sidekick. And he's kind of been that way, especially with eating at the end of every episode. But then he kind of stopped that. This is a good time to do all this. But when those two are talking busting each other's chops, it's a great episode. It's always a great episode when we get a 2 or 3 minute shot of going into the Raven.
Yes.
You cannot bring him here, Nicholas. We can't have him cover anything up. She's just great. I love that just incredibly thick accent.
The background story also.
Her accent is as deep as her neckline, sir. Please continue.
You sure you didn't like this episode?
I didn't like it, but it was entertaining.
So we should go ahead and just talk about the subplot, the back story. It's Nick, LaCroix, and Jeanette being hunted. Like they're riding horses in the daytime, so they're all covered up in cloaks, and smoke is going off of their bodies.
Oh, that's so tremendous looking, isn't it? I mean, this gives you like Dark Shadows of the revival vibes, doesn't it?
But you keep getting those shots of her, and she has like one leg completely just exposed. It's like that'd be on fire right now.
They got the dry ice, right stuck behind them. It's such a cheap effect.
But no, they go ahead and they end up in a barn and they fight through. No mercy, Nicholas.
Well, we don't know what they've done, or at least at this point. And Jeanette, as much as she is, lover of his and a friend, whatever you want to call it, she's like, no, I can't go on. And it's like, you must. And the acting is top notch here.
Yeah, no, it is, but it's just not that interesting of a subplot. Every other subplot has seemed to matter more, especially towards the episode. Ultimately, though, Schanke has an idea. It's like, oh, make me bait, and Nick's like, maybe I put Schanke in the wrong cage. What's the straw that breaks the camel's back? What makes him go ahead and do his mad dash after the killer?
They're out of Chinese fortune
right?
cookies. What?
Huh?
I'm sorry. Continue.
He gets pulled in basically to the old training grounds. Schanke.
I like, surprisingly, the scenes in The Raven where he's talking with Jeanette, because she's somebody, like I say, this is such a hard watch. You can find it on YouTube for free. It's not legal or anything like that. We certainly wouldn't advocate anything like that here on our broadcast. Obviously, there's alternative methods, but it's unfortunate this isn't something that, even though I've got the DVD treatment, this is a DVD of a show in the early 80s, so I think the translation isn't as great as what you could have. Maybe there's a Blu-ray or something, a higher quality floating around, because I'm telling you, she's got a nice look to her. And again, The Raven is something that they intentionally, film it differently as far as like the colors and the scheme with these weird, Euro trash kind of artsy angles to it, which I'm fully in favor of. And I like to see Schanke in there talking with her about it, because Schanke is the kind of guy that you'd go, oh, he's so dumb, he's lucky he doesn't see all the world's problems, that sort of thing. No, he's a very headstrong kind of guy, and he's a bit of a smart ass, and I wish they would play this bit of a dick side of him up a bit more, because if he thinks something's right, he's not letting go. He's got a bit of that bulldog mentality in him, but the character so far, like I say, it's been a bit fluid, kind of like with Nick and all that. Sometimes we see him and Natalie kind of acting like a couple, other times they're not, and it's just one of those things where it's like it's not very clear which each role is going to be. So you still have time to kind of fine tune it, and I just don't know if, based off of feedback, where this is going to go as far as he's concerned. Because I thought, hey, it makes Jeanette's character show up a little bit more, I think, when you give her somebody other than Nick to talk to, rather than a flashback with LaCroix, right? So that's another reason why I found this episode a little bit interesting, because you and I have talked about, again, the episode's generally better when Nick and Schanke are busting each other's balls, working together, doing something, where he gets a few little socializing things going on. The earlier his turtleneck comes out, the better, and we get a shot of the Raven. And so I'm saying all these things because of what we've talked about. We like to see the characterization come through, and I feel like that happened in this episode, but I feel like it happened unintentionally. That's why I think it's a bad episode in that sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just feel like this entire end scene, like, oh, it's actually somebody I went ahead and trained with. Oh, it's we have nothing of Schanke's past. So to go ahead, honestly, maybe they should have done a subplot of Schanke's training for the police.
Oh yeah, like in the police academy, Schanke when he's young, and his sideburns only go halfway down his face. Yes.
Go ahead. If you're going to make it a Schanke focus episode, do that. Because Nick's role in here is just being Schanke's partner. And honestly, we get very little vampire action. We get, even with the backstory, it's like, oh, that's okay. It's there, but it has nothing to do with what we're supposed to be focusing on in this episode. And ultimately, you do get Nick saying to Schanke that you're a good cop. Everything you do, everything you choose to do, how you handle situations, you are a good cop, good man.
Yeah.
And it's
go ahead.
Still, with all that we've said between each other, I still think you like this episode more than I do. It's so funny because you said, maybe you'll say something. Maybe you'll say something to convince me to like this episode. But the more you talked about it, the more it sounded like you liked it. The more I talked about it, the less I liked it.
Well, what this show does good, and this is where I think, I've talked about the scenes that make it good, but the show really is supposed to be about Nick Knight kind of learning, like I say, how to be human. And so, like, for example, before the big final thing, you get Nick in his crib by the piano, just tinkering around on the keys while looking at a candle's flame while, hearing stuff go on in the background. And they give you a good probably 2 minutes of this. I'm not exaggerating. And it's like, that's what makes the show kind of buzz, because we're not watching him to do flying, because the effects in here are horrible. This is a very small, low budget thing. The actor really pulls it off well, even though the contact lenses look kind of weird and goofy. It's believable, especially considering the budget. This is a time when, again, the shots, most of them in the show, especially if they're not inside a building, they're outside. And again, it's supposed to be the graveyard shift because Nick has a sensitivity to light, therefore it only works the graveyard shift. And we haven't seen, we see him already in that environment. We didn't see how he got to that environment, which I don't know if that'll ever happen. I'm okay with that not being the case, but I do give credit for where Nick's able to kind of back off a little bit and not have any issues with Schanke being kind of the lead of it. And we get, some of the flying scenes and stuff in there and all that, but for us, the majority of the time, the ending of the episode, we don't really care about the resolution of it, because it really comes down to, do we like the A plot here or do we like the B one? The B one seemed kind of thin. It's not going anywhere. I thought the show was going to be a lot of, especially on the radio with LaCroix, I'm in your town, where, he's going to be like hunting him down. There's going to be this threat of maybe he's getting hunted by all the other vampires because he's daring to try to intermingle with the humans. We haven't gotten that. And I really honestly thought early on in the season we were going to get that. Now we're not. It's just down to the police procedural aspect of it. But Schanke's, he's holding his weight here. And just so people know, I believe this is the same actor that was the janitor in the John Hughes movie, Breakfast Club, believe it or not. It was like, oh yeah, you guys throw away all your notes? I go through all your trash. I read them all. I know that this is going that. And I go, I know who that guy is, that he's been in other stuff. And I always thought, oh, it's the janitor guy. He's known for that role. But now I'm going, no, that's Schanke. Because Schanke's, I look at a guy like this that will never have been probably an A-lister actor just for whatever reason. It's not a knock on him as an actor. But the fact that he could have a decent career working 3 seasons, I'm assuming he's in all 3 here with this actor in the Canadian show, shows, hey, this guy is a good actor. I mean, if you give him a character that's got some meat and potatoes to him, he can deliver. He just doesn't have to be a laughingstock. And that is one thing about this episode, that even though it's fairly forgettable to me, it's just one of those that I'd be like, yeah, if I had to pull out a few episodes, it wouldn't be this one. But I do go, well, wait a minute, that's the Schanke episode. Because at first we're like, yeah, Schanke's going to be a putz. Now we're like, nah, I don't know if I see that. So again, being a first season on something, you can kind of redefine it going into season 2. Most TV shows have a tendency to do that. But overall, like I said, pretty much a forgettable episode. But it's not a bad one. But I guess it depends on what you like on it. And that's just what we want to talk about it. So you're right. Not the biggest fan of this episode, but I found it a bit entertaining. But it's all because of Schanke. And I give him credit. Not all episodes in TV, when they focus on another character, does it deliver. So I'll give him credit for that being a positive. What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts for this episode are just it's kind of a lame duck one. I think now that we've actually discussed it and it's marinated in my mind for a little bit, I'm just not a big fan. Do you remember? I think we forgot to mention. There's like one bit where Schanke is talking to a newspaper lady, and he just runs away as her back is turned, and then Nick goes ahead and he appears to ask where he could have gone, and then she turns around. Oh well, people are just disappearing on me, and she turns around, realizes where he is. And it's not funny. It's not, and that's how I feel. That's the most memorable thing about this episode for me. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting dive into the show because just seriously speaking for one moment, I do think it's a solid show. It's one of these late night types of shows that, again, being Canadian, it can have a slightly different feel to it. And even though it's a procedural and it follows TV formats and all that, it's the content, what they were trying to do with him being not a vegan, not, anti whatever, just a sensitive, understanding fellow who just happens to be, a hunter, if you will, a forever knight. And you could turn this into full on camp. And I think that they honestly try to, in a lot of episodes, not do that. So I do feel like there's direction with the whole season with what they're trying to do. And that is appreciated, is what I'm saying. So it somehow works better being on a low budget, it feels like, than say they got $1 million an episode to film it or something, which they obviously didn't.
Well,
I mean,
I
think it helps with them, with people that are pretty good, that are punching probably above their weight most of the time.
I think a larger budget would hurt it. That's part of the charm. The thing is that I think that at this point, 11 episodes in, we discussed it. At the end of the day, does this episode really matter toward the series? Hopefully, this has something down the line to go ahead and call back to, and retroactively make us remember a little more fondly. But right now, I'm just Schanke's episode was more like a shank to me.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, Episode 11, The Hunter Forever Night. Our Season 1 review of this TV show here. After this, we'll pick another TV show and review that as well. If you have any comments, suggestions, or thoughts about what TV shows you'd like us to consider moving on in the future, let us know. We're getting ready to get in the middle of this season, so I think it's going pretty well, Pixel. I guess sit there and say it's surprising when we talk about how we did all 3 seasons of Twin Peaks, Season 1 of Haven, how we've done The Prisoner, Mission Impossible. We cover a lot of different things here. I got to say this, Forever Night's fairly unique in what it does. We like Dark Shadows of Revival. We covered that. That's tremendous. This is not bad. It's not camp. It's actually somewhat serious at this point, and that they're taking it that way. And that's one of the positive things that will surprise you, especially for a show that's late night TV in the early 90s. Like to thank everybody for listening and watching. Good night now.
But it's most certainly not a Dan Curtis